All right, so the last thing I said was the department does not have the authority to prosecute. It's up to the DA, and in the grand scheme of things, sometimes the complaints that are brought forth may become low priority. What Jeff Wigan had suggested is that some of the issues with the complaints of one, there have not been a lot of complaints, very minimal over the last 5 years since the law's been enacted. So that's problematic. There's just not enough noise, I guess that's the best word I can use. And so if we're not getting the attention of our legislators, if we're not filing complaints, it's just not going to warrant that attention. So that's problematic. Two, go ahead.
And that they got complaints that were anonymous as opposed to ones where people were willing to put their names in. And they said that was a huge issue on their end because they're not willing to follow up with those. And in some other areas of licensure, it's a practice where competitors will use that as a weapon against other competitors. So they really, to do the investigation, probably want to know who is making the complaints. So
Yep.
he mentioned that we say that they want it to be not anonymous moving forward.
Yeah, and so I'm glad you said that. I was going to bring that up, and he said that is problematic because they can't follow up. His suggestion would be that, you know, whether it be WAD, and I don't know if that's the appropriate place, but a group or an entity on behalf of concerns with the deaf community put forth that complaint, and that might have more power. And so, you know, again, being a member of both WAD and Worcester, this is something that I'd like to share with them and talk about what sort of action can we take if there are these concerns. So that was his suggestion on that piece. But that has been the problem, just not enough, and the anonymous complaints. So we got some work to do in that way. I also asked him, I said, well, you know, people are concerned about SLIC, that it doesn't have the monitoring authority, it doesn't really get to enforce anything. I talked about, well, what if we looked into having an examining board where we bring in professionals and experts? So whether it be someone designated within DSPS, this one person who reviews the complaints, or whether we have an examining board, let's say they both come to the same conclusion. Oh, yep, this interpreter is in violation, they have not met the requirements. What they end up doing is sending that individual a cease and desist order, but he said there's not much teeth in that. So the interpreter can go, oh, okay, and throw it away, and not follow it, and they could continue working. And then Mike Gallagher had followed up and said there's also a follow-up to that, which is a forfeiture, where a person can receive another letter where they're fined for $10,000. Again, who is going to make that happen? That goes back to the DA. That the DA, you know, so if an interpreter is in serious violation, how do we get the attention of the DA to say this is something that we need to solve? Again, an advocacy education piece that we have to do with both within the deaf community and the interpreting community. Is that aligned?
Yep.
Okay. So that, yeah, I was like, okay. So the enforcement piece, and I know Amy is going to give an update. Jeff's, just his professional opinion, is there isn't much that's not already covered in the law that we can do. It really is people knowing what their rights are and filing and getting people's attention. Okay. Amy, did you want to add to that? I mean, anything that I've said that you want to...
I can just do my update when I do my update.
Okay. Do you think it would be good to do
Yeah,
it now?
Sure, it's
All
very
right.
short.
Since we're talking about enforcement, I'm curious as to what you and your group talked about.
Hello. So our enforcement subcommittee had two different meetings. One was very small, one had a few more participants. In the end, we came to the same conclusion of information that individuals who are committing unlicensed practice, there are very few avenues as to how to see enforcement happen and punishment happen. So that is not a fight that we can address here. So we moved on and talked about the actual punishments that are listed within the law. If for some reason we're able to get a DA to take the case, how will they enforce it? So we looked at increasing the fine to a fine of $1,000, because right now it's currently at a very minimal level of $200. And the second recommended change that we have is trying to figure out, if possible, a minimum 2-year suspension of this individual's license, whether it be a 150 or 151. And also suspending that individual from applying for a 150 or a 151 license. So those are the 2 changes that we'd like to make at this point. There's an additional option. After looking at the midwife license and a few other licenses, we looked at acupuncture, we looked at a couple other different professions that are still emerging in the professional realm. For example, midwife isn't looked at the same as a nurse practitioner. So we just wanted to kind of get a feel for how other lesser-known occupations are dealing with situations. They have a use of title clause that we'd like to add, and it seems like it would be best added after definitions and before license required in the law. And before license required, this statement, and it would be, no person may use the title licensed sign language interpreter, describe or imply that he or she is a licensed sign language interpreter, or represent themselves as a sign language interpreter, unless the person is granted a license under this subchapter or is exempt under a statute that we have listed. And then we had written in, if any person violates this sub 1, is how we have it listed, they may be fined not more than $200, imprisoned more than 6 months, or both. So again, it's just that enforcement piece, if we would change it to $1,000. It's just adding a little more teeth and more clarity to how someone might pursue the avenue of going to the DA and suing someone. And then putting sign language interpreter means a person who is granted a license under this subchapter to engage in the practice of interpreting. Again, we used the midwives law, and we took it verbatim and just adjusted it. And we don't know if all of this is possible specifically, but these are some areas that we felt that we would be able to address. We had very limited participation from the community as far as people wanting to be involved in this, and seeing how limited the teeth are as far as what we can do, I can understand why individuals may not have been too excited to be on this subcommittee, but I think everyone who brought forth their ideas and thoughts wanted to be a part of it, so thank you.
Do you have any comments for that? I just think, I think that's great. I think those are good ideas. I think that every DA's office in the 72 counties is different, and there's varying degrees of understanding of, you know, the situation, and maybe there could be some edification on their end and education towards this issue in specific to get them more likely to prosecute, but it might, you know, it can be tough when they're sometimes overburdened and they don't want to take a case like this on. So I think there'll be a lot of relationship building and educating that has to happen with the DAs as well to get them a little more active on this.
Well, and I think one of the areas that we can really work on that is working towards getting a place at the table when they have, you know, there's the judiciary conference, and then they have attorneys that meet every year, and they have conferences. And one of the things I know specifically on the judiciary level is that they do have this Wisconsin Supreme Court interpreter organization. They go in and they talk about what's required there. They give examples of appropriate interpreters. And we have worked with prosecutors before, and I've seen people make that happen. So I think working with our organizations to potentially get a foot in the door, to be able to maybe get 10 minutes of their time in their ear during one of those might be a great way for educating them, just to start getting the word out. So thank you for your help.
Thank you, Amy.
Here's my
Yes, and